As I talk about people's questions, issues, problems, concerns, I'm hoping that you're noticing that I don't really care about solving individual problems. Those never stop. What I care about is helping people to see the patterns of their behaviors, what they mean, the fears behind them, and then how can the generalized principles of loving solve anything? So the real questions as people talk are, what would it be like in this situation if you were loving? How would it change the world around you, your partner, whoever? Would you like to add love to this situation, or fear? Or anger is the fuel of every conflict, while love is the seed of joy. So will you add fuel to the fire or plant the seeds of life? Those are the questions that matter. Those are the questions that underlie pretty much everything I'm going to say in the next hour. A week or two ago, I talked about a woman who said that her husband, Rick, refused to take care of himself physically. Lots of medical problems, but he wouldn't do the lab tests or go to the doctor, and he was being a bit of a jerk. And she asked what she could do, and I said that his health is her business. That's one of the things that you have to answer before you stick your nose in what somebody else is doing. His health is her business because his income is their family's primary income, and his work is a family business that employs two of the kids. So I suggested that she have the two boys and her tell him while he's at work that he can get in the car like a big boy and go get the tests, or they tie him up and drag him to the car, which I've seen people do. So it can be done. And he got in the car and he went and got his blood test done. This is a follow-up to that. She writes, today, Rick went to the doctor and got all of his blood work back, and doesn't matter what the tests were, his X and his Y were too high, and his Z was just completely out of whack, like as in they wondered if he was going to live. When he got home, I knew that he was going to be upset and in a bad mood because of the results. Now, here's where we screw up. He gets in a bad mood to get you to back off. He gets in a bad mood so he doesn't have to talk about it. He gets in a bad mood so he doesn't have to modify his diet or do the follow-up tests or the whatever. He uses his bad mood as a weapon, and you let him. So when you say he's going to be in a bad mood, my response is tough. Too bad. It's like somebody having spring a leak in the pipe in their house, and it's going to just completely destroy the house, the walls, the wood, the everything. And, the guy's watching television and he says, well, I don't really want to deal with that. Yeah, well, too bad. Get up off your butt and go fix the pipe, or get a plumber there or something. Pretty much the same with his health. You tell him he has to face this. And being upset at you is not going to change that. So he needs to man up. And actually, he will respond to that phrase since I know him. He needs to man up and simply do what the doctor says. If he had done what the doctor said all along, he wouldn't be in this precarious position where now he has to do something. And yes, I know he's afraid, which is exactly why often somebody else has to help manage the frightened person's health. He needs you. So he's afraid. He needs you to interfere. It's not really interfering. He needs you to guide him, participate, teach, love him. Because you don't do any of this with a snotty attitude. You continue. I talked with his doctor tonight, and she told me that his X, whatever number, is so messed up that she said that it's now progressed to an autoimmune disease with a long name, and that his life is now in danger. She said his body is stressed out, his whole body. And It's causing the autoimmune disease and also his abnormal results in other areas. In other words, his body is crashing and he's going to die from stress. Well, that would qualify as, a broken pipe in the attic, wouldn't it? All stress. This guy swims in stress. I've heard countless stories of your interaction with him. It's going to kill him, not joking, and he won't face it. Instead, this is an important distinction for everybody who's listening. This isn't about a health problem. This is about stress. Instead of facing his stress and doing something about it, he simply vents his anger because temporarily it feels better. But that doesn't relieve the stress. For years in psychology, therapists taught their patients to beat pillows with bats and tennis rackets and get out your stress. And now they've done the studies that prove absolutely beyond doubt that doesn't work. In fact, the more you vent your anger, the more angry you become. That's what he does. He vents anger instead of dealing with stress. He won't listen to anything having to do with unconditional love. Okay, I got that, fine. But he still has to deal with this. And if he won't, you will. So he doesn't want to deal with unconditional love, and yet it's the only thing that will relieve his stress. So at some point, this discussion is going to come to a real log jam, isn't it? And you're going to have to do something about it. Or he dies. And that may be what he chooses to do. But do you want to stand by while he dies? I don't know. Maybe you do. That's one of your choices too. So you continue. The doctor put him on a medication to try to get his thyroid in balance, and he'll get more blood work in 6 weeks. If he doesn't have things more under control with that and some of the other problems, apparently he has quite a list, then she'll send him to some specialists. One for his prostate, one for, it just sort of goes on and on. He is so fearful of having prostate cancer that he won't do any of the tests or the work that involve detecting it or treating it. Yeah, right. So his solution is to not get tested. So much better to die of cancer than to learn about it, right? Use that line with him. He has his own business. He puts things together. I happen to know he does things with his hands. So ask him, if there's a leak in a pipe in the attic of your building, which will eventually destroy everything, would you rather just have everybody hide it from you? Or would you like to know about it so that you can save your entire business? That's how stupid he's being with this whole prostate business. And it's understandable. I'm not making fun of the guy. Fear makes us crazy, nuts. What he's doing is like being in heavy traffic and he's afraid, but instead of being careful and using his GPS and watching the road, he avoids the stress of driving in heavy traffic by closing his eyes and continuing to drive. That sounds nuts. Well, it is nuts. And what he's doing is nuts. And it would guarantee his death in traffic. Well, what he's doing now is going to guarantee his death too. Dead. Once you ask him, once you're dead, it's kind of too late to do all these tests. The idea of doing the tests is so, you're not dead. Now, you need to keep in mind, as you're talking to him, that you don't get too strident about this, because he's not a happy man. And he may actually prefer to be dead. You just need to keep that in your mind as you're talking to him. You say, I talked with him about all the doctor told me, and then he overreacted, just like I knew he would. He said he doesn't want any part of it, and he just wants to die, which is what I was just suggesting might be true. I was calm and listened, and then I said, Rick, you are my partner, and I'm your partner, and we are going to do this together. You either do what your doctor says, or I'm leaving you. Honey, if you can't hear me cheering from here, I'll cheer louder. That's beautiful. I wish there were emojis for this. You told him what you required of him in a partnership or you were leaving. Good for you. Because otherwise, look at the options. He'll get sick and disabled. And exactly who do you think he'll rely on when he gets sick and disabled and has cancer and can't move from his hospital bed? Who do you think he's going to count on? You. So you do have a say. And he can just suck it up and do what you say. Now, to those who are listening, I wouldn't say the same thing to everybody, but I know this man, and he's been stubborn and uncooperative and belligerent and prickly and attacking and avoiding everything in his life, well, for his whole life, including his marriage. Everything is his way, or it's not at all. I mean, forget emotional intimacy, but he's got to deal with this, and she gets to do something about it because it affects her. In the end, she probably can't make him. His two sons aren't going to be able to go on and hold him down for chemotherapy, but she can at least require that he listen. She continues. I told him, you need to do this for us. I told him that I take care of myself for us. And he said, well, you do what you want to take care of yourself, but I don't want to. He said that I should be able to do what I want to do, meaning he should be able to do what he wants to do. And I repeated, fine, if you're not going to do what the doctor says, I'm leaving. Now, for those of you who are listening, this is particular genius on her part. See, I'm not so sure he cares whether he lives. This is nuts, but I know the guy. If he dies, he wouldn't care so much. He'll avoid all the pain of life. But you know what he fears more than dying? He fears her leaving him alone. And he fears her taking half of his assets. I'm not joking. I can't tell you how many guys would rather be dead than give up half their assets. So when she says, I'm going to leave, he does stuff. But pretty much only if she's on the way out the door with a packed bag. We've been through this before. So back to her. What you're doing is, in this case, perfect. He only understands action. You have argued with this man for 30 years. And as far as I know, his record is perfect. He's never listened. But he does understand action. Get up or I'm going to shoot you in the leg. He understands that. You really need to do this for your health. He doesn't care. You continue. As we kept talking, and he saw that I wasn't giving into his whining, things began to change. It took some time, but he got better. He actually calmed down a little bit. Good for you. He was even in a better mood by the time that we were done talking. When he overreacts about things, are there other things that I should do to try to get him to be more reasonable? Yes, but talking isn't one of them. He could out-talk you any day of the week. While he's asleep, he could out-talk you. But you could say, Rick, we're not going to do this anymore. You're overreacting. You're acting like a child. You're stressed out. And I'm not going to keep playing this game with you. So you can calm down right now, because you asked what you could do in the moment. You can calm down right now and talk to me about this, or I will leave the room and I will come back in 10 minutes and we will resume the conversation. If the television's on, I'm going to turn it off. If you keep refusing to be reasonable and talk to me, I'll get a hotel for the night. Now, why would I recommend that to everybody who's listening? He's very familiar with the language of intimidation. Not normally what I would recommend first, but she's tried everything that's reasonable, and it's been a complete failure. She continues, when he's like that, I feel like getting angry back at him. It's not just his health when he does that. He does this when it comes to money or time or the kids or anything that annoys him. I tell him to stop being negative, and he says, I'm not being negative. I'm being realistic. I would suggest you say, no, actually, you're being a jerk, and I'm trying to be nice about it. You continue. He has said, I'm not being negative. I'm being realistic for our whole marriage. I've always been realistic. If I could take the word realistic out of his vocabulary, this is her talking, I would. I know it's fear when he does what he does. Are there other things that he's saying when he overreacts? Yeah. When he overreacts, he's just terrified. You could say, Rick, and I'm not telling you what to say. This is just a response so you don't feel trapped, because presently when he gets intimidating, you just tend to fold, although, wow, are you doing better? You could say, Rick, realistic means that you're telling the truth, hence the root of the word real. But you do not tell the truth. You only talk about your fears and what you don't like. You don't tell the truth about how stress is killing you. You don't talk about how your anger and overreaction are killing our marriage, how your anger has virtually emotionally destroyed your children, how you're ignoring your health and putting me in a position of caring for your crippled body is completely unreasonable. You don't tell the truth about those things. So you don't tell the truth. You only harp on your fears. So you don't get to use the word realistic in my presence ever again. Now, the follow-up of this is 2 or 3 emails later, she said, he's never used the word realistic again. He's still being a bit of a jerk, but because she's being insistent on what is required of him for his health, he's actually participating in his medical process. This sounds confrontational. Keep in mind that this is the end result of her trying love, reason, love some more, becoming less fearful herself, becoming more intimate with him, doing everything, and he's responding with nothing and has decided pretty much to die and keep destroying his family. So now we're at what they call extreme measures. This would not, what I'm recommending here to her, would not be the first step I'd recommend to somebody who is writing me for the first time. Just understand that. And throughout all this, she says it lovingly. There's no yelling. There's no tone of voice, or all of this just implodes. No kidding. New subject. This is a mother who writes and says, Florence, my 4-year-old, has always had a major fear of animals. She was 6 months old when a kitten wandered in a room where she was alone, and she freaked out, went nuts. Her sister, by contrast, who's 2, isn't afraid of animals at all. It's a little unusual to be afraid of a kitten, but hey, there are fears of everything. You continue. Since then, she gets wildly afraid with almost any animal, but particularly cats and dogs. We don't avoid them. I always make an effort to reach down and touch them or stroke them when I see the animals. That's really smart of you, my dear. It's good that you don't avoid them. If you avoided them, you'd just be confirming her fears and making them worse. And you touching them is especially brilliant. You continue. When she gets frightened, we ask her who loves her, which is really very clever. But she doesn't take her eyes off the dog or whatever animal. Is there anything else that we can do? Oh, lots of things you can do. I'll talk about just a couple, just so you see you're not stuck. That's all. So like I said at the top of the video chat, I don't care about solving the individual problem. I don't care if you do what I suggest. It's about putting loving effort into a thing. What would happen here if I were more loving and less afraid? What would I do? Whoa, options open up. So for example, when her sister, who's 2, Eden, is with a dog, you could say to her, is the dog hurting Eden? So that she can see that there is the possibility of not being afraid. You don't say, isn't it great that Eden is more brave around animals than you? That wouldn't work very well. Or you should be more like your sister. No, just, is the dog hurting Eden? It's a yes or no question. You don't require her to think. The more people think, the more afraid they get. You could show her pictures of cats and dogs, like all over the place, in magazines, on the internet. My golly, there's endless pictures of our pets, and have her touch the picture on the page, the picture on the screen. Have her touch them. Don't make a commentary. Don't see they don't hurt you, because see, that's not a real cat or a dog. Just touch them. You touch them, have her touch them. If it helps her, You touch the picture of the cat or the dog, and she just touches your hand, as opposed to touching the picture. Work up to it, whatever. The point is, you're loving her through this, not pushing her through it. The solution wouldn't be to put her in a 55-gallon drum and throw in a couple of dogs. Although that is one form of therapy that has been used. You could have her watch YouTubes of gentle cats and dogs. I'm just going to guess that there are a million YouTubes out there of cats and dogs doing little cute, adorable things. Cut out some pictures of cats and dogs now. Get this one. Then have her put the picture of the cat or dog in her pocket. Put one in yours. You're out somewhere and you just pull it out and go, oh, so cute. No lecture. No tone of, see, you don't have to be afraid. It's about loving. If you do the see thing, you're done. You're going to make her more afraid. If you have stuffed animals in the shape of animals, if you have stuffed toys in the shape of animals, play with those. Let her name the animal. That's just the things that come off the top of my head without any thinking at all. I get a second email. And she says this. The mother. We're at Catherine's, a friend of hers, with her dog, Max. I followed your advice. I asked Catherine for photos of Max. Actually, you didn't follow my advice. Yours is smarter. Instead of just getting pictures of dogs, you got pictures of a dog that she was going to go see. And I showed the pictures of Max to Florence. I asked her if she'd ever seen Max hurt her sister, to which she said, no. And you could just see her thinking, that dog has never hurt my sister. That's one. I also asked if she thought she would be happier if she was afraid of Max or if she was brave around Max. That was risky, using the word brave, but not wrong. And she said, brave. Ooh, you've got her now. That was really good. That was better than I'd suggested. See, and when you felt loved and unafraid, you came up with a solution better than mine. Choice, brilliant. You gave her a choice. Would you like to be happy, or would you like to be unhappy? Would you like to be brave or not? She chose, I think I'd be happier if I was brave. You continue. We talked about this stuff for a while en route to Catherine's house. When we arrived, I said, there's no hurry. Oh, beautiful. Some of the most magical words I've ever discovered in my life. I'm at a store and I'm looking for something, and the clerk is trying to help me, and they're obviously flustered. There are other people in line. They have other things to do. And I've learned that, and I don't use it as a manipulation. But if somebody's flustered, I say, we're not in a hurry. I'm not in a rush. Oh my gosh. The person helping me will fall all over themselves to get whatever it is that I'm looking for. Because why? I manipulated them? No. Because as we talked about at the top of the hour, what are you going to bring to this? Do you want to bring more love, or do you want to bring more fear? I saw that they were afraid, and I said, relax, not in a hurry. They became less afraid. Poof, they solved the problem. So they get to Catherine's. I said, there's no rush. Brilliant on your part. We made a plan that I would hold her hand and sit her on the table where she could watch Eden play with Max. She would then tell me when she was feeling brave, and I would get her down. Apparently, Max was on the floor, and she was up on the table away from Max. It took about 30 minutes. Now, that's really patient. See, many parents would be going, after 3 minutes, well, that does not calm a child down, for those of you who have tried this particular technique. After 30 minutes, she gets down and she starts to stroke the dog. Cue the angels. We talked about how soft and cuddly he was. She stroked his nose, his head, and was soon wrapping her arms around him. Oh, that's just so lovely. At one point, while we were upstairs and on our way down, she had a moment of forgetfulness, and she said in a nervous voice, "Wait, where's Max?" Like, is the tiger out of his cage? And then she immediately laughed. This is the 4-year-old who's figuring this out without any help. "Oh, that's right. I'm not afraid anymore. Maybe I could get Florence to teach a few adults I know to do this. I don't have to be afraid anymore. There have been times I've wanted the adults to learn this quick." Mom says it was beautiful. And it is beautiful. She's amazing. What a little miracle you worked. Mom concludes, "This girl's been afraid of animals since she was a baby. No doubt a reflection of my own fear of life back then." Oof, that's called being a mother. That's just lovely. "The joy in her without fear is miraculous." This is what I've been talking about for, 25 years. This is the power of loving and teaching. It changes a kid's life. You just made a difference in this kid's life in reducing her fear for a lifetime. And because of what we know about epigenetics and loving and teaching, probably for an entire generational line. Like, you're a hero. New subject. This is from a mother and daughter who I've known for quite a while. I can't remember if they both wrote me. We're going to find out in a minute because I can't remember. The mother says, "My daughter and I were having a little philosophical discussion. And she said, imagine what it would be like if one day God said he didn't care about you and you were worthless. I agreed that such a thing would feel unbearable," says the mom. Hence my saying it's from mother and daughter. It's a discussion between them. Yeah, that would be pretty terrible. God comes down and goes, "Oh, you over there in the corner in the red shirt, worthless. There's no sense you're continuing to live." Yeah, it'd be kind of hard to hear, wouldn't it? Mom says, "We concluded that if that happened, it would be almost impossible to keep any self-esteem. In fact, we concluded that self-esteem in itself does not exist and cannot exist without a powerful love from a respected source of love, like God. And since parents are like God to a child cannot have self-esteem without the unconditional love of a parent." You pretty much just summarized, let's see, the parenting book, the PCSD book, all in, 8 lines. Perfect. Yes. New subject. Somebody wrote and said, Descartes, his first name was Rene, and he was a philosopher back in, forever ago, like the 1600s. He said, "I think, therefore I am." I don't know anything about Latin, so don't write me and tell me I pronounced it wrong. I'm certain that I did. See, cogito ergo sum. I think that's how it's said. I think, therefore I am. He said it in Latin, which is the only reason I say it in Latin. Certainly not to impress you with my knowledge of Latin. Implying that thinking proves and precedes existence. If you think, you prove that you exist. That seems to make a lot of sense. But this person writing says, "But I believe it's way more accurate to say, I need love, I can feel love, and I can love others. Therefore, I am." That's pretty clever, because there's something called a Turing test that was posed by a British mathematician named Alan Turing that can be applied to computers. And the test goes like this. If you have a conversation with a computer on the other side of a wall or table or microphone, whatever, using headphones, and because you can't see who you're talking to, if you talk with a computer and you can't tell whether you're talking to a human or a computer, then the Turing test says, then the computer becomes an artificial intelligence. If you can't tell the difference, becomes essentially a being. Years ago, for example, the best computers in the world consistently lost to the world chess champion. The champion was way smarter than the computers. It has been years since that has happened. The best computers consistently beat the world chess champion now. They can think too far ahead and too fast. So computers, for example, can think, like Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. So then are computers self-aware? Which is what he meant by I am. Rocks are, but they don't think. But see, they don't need, feel, or give love. So needing, feeling, and giving love are pretty good tests for genuine humanity. Certainly a lot better than thinking. I know quite a few people who think really well, and as far as I can tell, they're not alive. New subject. When I started Real Love, I was super motivated to become a better person, but mainly through fear. So, for example, I was a maniac about things like personal fitness. I didn't miss a gym session, for example. Gym every day, do my workout, stronger. And work, lots of hours of work. I got tasks done. I read lots of books. I was just a crazy person at doing stuff. And that seems to make sense at the time because they're all like good activities, right? I mean, who could possibly impugn you for working out, reading books, getting tasks done? And they have the added benefit of proving what a good person you are. Since they're good activities, then if you did them, then you must be a good person. Yeah, it's a really sneaky trap. You continue. Since getting far more experience with Real Love and losing the fear motivation, I now find it harder to be responsible because I'm kind of losing my motivation to do any of that old stuff. Yeah, I get that. Really smart of you to see it. Right now, you don't feel motivated because no matter what you've ever done before, all that doing, you weren't genuinely happier. So why should you care about anything? And hang on. Just keep getting loved and taught, and you're going to figure this out. You continue. Example. Normally, I set my phone at the start of the week to get up at 7 a.m. every day, read, go to the gym. So far this week, I've turned my alarm off at 7 every day and reset it for 9. Not 10 after 7. 9. I'm assuming you meant a.m., not p.m. You continue. I would like to get into the new habit of reading in the evenings, for example, rather than watching movies. And when I do watch movies, I'd like to get into the habit of watching, more inspiring movies rather than garbage like I usually watch. But I don't seem to want to do this bad enough to do it, so I just don't. Same answer. The motivation is lacking. When you feel happy consistently, when you know who you really are, all kinds of activities will naturally flow from you instead of you're using activity to prove who you are. I'm going to say that again because it's really kind of important. When you know who you are, when you're happy, when you feel peaceful, when there's no fear, all kinds of activity will flow from who you are instead of you're using activity to prove who you are. That's endless and fruitless and just never works. And whereas the first one is fun, creative, you could do it your entire life. It turns out that once you're happy, being yourself is fun and pretty energizing. Great question. Like, woohoo. New subject. A woman in Real Love for a couple of years. She divorced years ago, and she shares custody of her teenage son, Stephen. She asked for advice on how to answer a letter from her ex. Here's the email from the ex. The ex says, Stephen, that's the son of the ex and the lady who's writing, Stephen's behavior toward me and the family, because he's remarried, continues to be unacceptable, as proven by the texts that he then pasted below. We have worked overtime and exhausted our resources far too long to continue tolerating this type of treatment. So sadly, for now, I think that in order for him to be here, he needs to come with us to see our family therapist. Our next appointment is Wednesday. Until then, I think it's best for us to take a brief time out. She said, well, Stephen behaves pretty well at my house. I'm not having any difficulty with him at all. His behavior is certainly far from intolerable. So how do I answer my ex's demands that I somehow get involved in this? So ask yourself the question, do I want to bring love to this, or do I want to bring fear to it? Do I want to bring the seeds of life, or do I want to add to the fire? This isn't complicated. Stay out of it. Don't even answer the email. Don't do it. There isn't a word you say he's not going to fight with. Your ex has proven over a great many years that he is incapable of being selfless, since I've had considerable experience with you and with him by way of reading his emails. Of course, your son hates being with his father. His father's a consummately selfish person, so he's hating it and he's acting out against it. Nothing you say to your ex is going to have a good outcome. You're not going to make him selfless. You're not going to make your son hate less being around a completely selfish person. So you don't respond. And you just enjoy the fact that you have a good relationship with your son. How lovely is that going to be? What's my response? None. Most of us just can't leave it alone. This is a woman who writes, there's a man in my church. He seems totally harmless, but he smiles at me a lot. Certainly suspicious there. And I don't really want to smile back. I feel like he kind of buzzes around me. He wants to be noticed. He wants some kind of interaction with me. Well, I happen to know the woman who's writing this, so, well, duh, of course he does. You project an inviting appearance, meaning physically, emotionally, you just invite people into your space. It is unavoidable that this would happen from time to time. You continue. I know him and his wife and have for like 30 years, but it's my actions that I want to change. I don't want to avoid him, but I do. I have a little dread that he, has that kind of interest in me. And I suppose that I've played along for the past couple of years. Like today at church, he was leading the congregational singing, and he always looks at me and smiles for an unnatural period of time. Forgive me. I am being slightly mocking because there's just a little bit of paranoia here. Darling, you're in charge of what happens in anything, really. I don't hear any hints that he sometimes walks into church carrying a chain that he might, attach to your foot and, tie you to his car. He hasn't touched you inappropriately in 30 years. Let him look at you. What's the beef? Who knows if it's too long or you're being too sensitive? I really don't know. And I doubt that you know, because there's an element of fear here, so it would cloud your judgment. If you're thinking about it, if you're obsessing about it, he'll feel that and he'll look more. He'll notice, it's ironic, you don't like him looking at you, but he'll notice you checking out whether he's looking at you. So you're looking at him to see if he's looking at you, and so naturally, the more you look at somebody, the more they look back. You may be generating this whole thing. Don't know. But you are in charge of what happens next. Just quit making a thing of it. Really. Do you want to add to the fire, or do you want to plant the seeds of life? Back to the original questions. Right now, you're feeding the fire. And you say, I could be misreading him. I know regardless of him that this is all about me. Good for you. I just don't want to work at it or spend any energy avoiding him. I want to be myself. And I don't really want to smile back anymore. I don't want this cycle anymore. Well, then, baby, you're in charge. Break the cycle. Whether you smile back just really doesn't matter very much. It's the main thing that's hurting you isn't him looking at you or smiling at you. It's your fussing about it. It's your making a thing of it. If somebody looks at me steadily during a meeting or a whatever, I just don't care. I don't even entertain a thought about why they're looking at me. I assume it's because I'm irresistibly handsome, and I'm good with that. But it's not his looking. Just stop the drama, and you won't care anymore. It'll be done. This is a Sylvie story. Bruce is Sylvie's younger brother, and Bruce is now 5, which kind of freaks me out. Actually, as I say that, Don is probably over there going, he's 6 now. One day he and Sylvie were playing and doing something, and he said, Sylvie, he holds his arms out wide. He says, this is our life. Can you believe this is our life? And his sister went, mm-hmm. I don't know very many adults who are mature enough, unafraid enough, grateful enough to just pause in the middle of what they're doing and go, wow, I cannot believe that my life gets to be this good. I can't believe this is my life. And Bruce is 5. Here's hoping he retains that, huh? Here's hoping I can be more like Bruce. I know a woman in real love who has 2 teenagers who used to be just out of control. It was insane. Name a thing. Situation from hell. Trouble at school, cursing, screaming, drug use. Terrible. You would think unfixable. The mom wanted to know if I could help her fix the kids. And I said, yeah, it's probably not a kid problem. So mom came and got loved. That's it. Just loved, a little teaching, mostly loving. Then she went home and she loved them and taught them. She gave them some firm guidance, occasionally consequences, but only when teaching and loving didn't work. One of the kids of the 2 was a 15-year-old girl who just, wow, used language with her mother that I couldn't imagine using with a human. I'm not sure I've ever used that kind of language with a dog. Refused to do anything around the house. She refused to go to school. So the mother writes, it seems as though my biggest job right now is to let all the goodness in. Kind of stops your heart to hear. I mean, it's kind of like a continuation of Bruce. Can you believe this is our life? Well, it's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it, honey. You continue. I picked up my daughter from school this afternoon, and she started playing songs on the radio in the car from Mamma Mia, because she knew that the song that she was playing was one of my favorites. And here we are driving home from school, as opposed to our screaming at each other back and forth, and we're singing at the top of our lungs with the windows down on a cold day because, well, it was funner. I looked over at her singing and smiling, and I could see how incredibly beautiful my little baby is. I can hardly read. This is how cool this is. It's not lost on me, you continue, that I couldn't see her only a few short months ago. I couldn't see who she was at all. I thought my heart would burst with joy as I saw her singing. Then she looked at me with amazing love in her eyes as she's telling me where all of her favorite parts in the songs are. It was like both our hearts were dancing at the same time. Well, I'm breathless. You conclude. I had this kind of connection with her when she was 2 or 3 years old. And then, poof, it was gone. I never thought in my wildest dreams that it would ever come back. And now, here it is. What happens at age 2 or 3, for most kids, sometimes way earlier, is that they're around fear and pain. In your case, your own fear, which was, whoa, just bubbling all the time like a cauldron. And your tense interactions with your ex. Your kid lived in a firefight all the time and had so much resilience. This is amazing, that she managed to retain her sweetness and gentleness until she was 2 or 3 years old. That's kind of miraculous. Not like tragic that she lost it at 2 or 3. It's miraculous that she kept it. But then eventually the burden of all that pain just squashed her flat. And now you've removed the fear and the pain, and who she really is, who she was when she was born, flowers. Even better than when she was 2 or 3. Oh, I'm impressed. New subject. A few chats back, I don't remember who wrote this. You talked about a mom who asked her kid something to the effect of, when have I not been loving to you recently? It's a very useful thing to occasionally ask your kids how you're doing. If you say while holding a baseball bat over their head, how am I doing as a mother? Well, they'll probably give you a good report. But if you're more specific, when was the last time that I was not loving to you? Oh, they're pretty good at that. Well, Mom, it was 17 minutes and 30 seconds ago. You continue. The next day, I asked my 10-year-old, actually, she is continuing. The next day, I asked my 10-year-old, and he quickly responded. After I listened and didn't argue, I just said, yeah, I can see how that would not have felt loving, and I did a really lousy job of teaching you. And he dang near did cartwheels as he walked away. Oh, baby, a parent admitting that they were wrong? Are you kidding me? It's actually in the old world parenting manual. Once you get to be the parent, well, then you're in a position of superior power, and you don't ever have to admit that you're wrong. It's always the child's fault. Yeah, well, it turns out that manual just really sucks and raises terrible children. Were you like nuts? Did you forget the old world manual? No, you were sweet and loving. You read the new manual. You read the parenting book. This builds your credibility with that child by 100 times. That child's going to listen to the next words out of your mouth like pearls were dropping from your lips because you told the truth. And it shows him an example of what it's like to be wrong and to learn. That's miraculous. We're always telling our children that they need to admit when they're wrong and learn. And then we never admit that we're wrong and we never learn anything. Well, that's kind of stupid. You continue. As a side note, I waited 24 hours and then I took another crack at teaching him again. And that went better. Brilliant of you to wait between being wrong and teaching him. Because occasionally a parent will admit being wrong. They'll say, well, okay, I was wrong to punch you in the face, but you still need to clean your room. The kid doesn't hear the cleaning the room part. You conclude by saying, tonight I asked the 14-year-old the same question. And again, without hesitation. It's kind of embarrassing when you ask your children when you were last stupid and they have no trouble remembering. Again, without hesitation, he told me where I fell short. I responded something similar as I had done with his brother. And this big teenage boy, because at 14 he's bigger than she is, fell into my arms for a goodnight hug, which hasn't happened in a while, like since he was 2. These are very fun stories to hear. This is what happens when A parent asks the question, do I want to bring more love into this situation? What will happen if I bring more love into this situation? How will it change me and the people around me? This is what happens when parents or people, or I've been talking about a variety of situations, when they ask that question and they respond with more love. The results are spectacular. Here's this girl, you just had to hear about this girl and the trouble she was causing. She was on her way to jail. This little girl in the car with her mother is singing songs from Mamma Mia because her mother likes them. I mean, all the people from Mamma Mia were dead before this girl was born. New subject. This is from a mother writing about her daughter named Brianna. Brianna had to write an essay for school, and the assignment or the prompt for the essay was write about something more important than money. So Brianna writes, I think Brianna's 10, pretty sure. Brianna writes, it's essential to life. It's more important than money. Love. I thought, this is her still writing. Embracing my mother's arms, I stared into her brown eyes, my feet still. I think love is more important than money because it drives away fear. Somebody has been reading the parenting book to this child. It also leads to happiness. Still the 10-year-old. First of all, love drives away fear. Fear creates holes in people. Love can fill those holes. Money can't. For example, I used to be afraid of mirrors. I thought that I would see something scary in them. But when I remember that I'm loved, I'm not afraid. Second, love leads to happiness. If you're loved, you can be loving. If you're loving, you can be happy. This is pretty good logic. Money can't make you genuinely happy. Money can't make you loving. For example, I'm broke, says the 10-year-old. That's just too funny to hear. I'm 10 years old and I'm broke. Well, that's the end of the world. But I feel loved and happy. This proves, unassailable logic, that you don't need money to be happy. Well, I'm sold. To sum up, we need love more than money. Love protects us from fear. It also enables true happiness. I'm in love with a 10-year-old. This is great. New subject. I know a man who's been at the outskirts of real love for years, but in the last year or so, he's really immersed in it. His life was a nightmare. If I made it into a movie, people would say that I was being overly dramatic. Such things couldn't exist. It's taken a year of a great many conversations and texts and emails and other contacts in person. But this man's waking up from the nightmare. The other day I saw him on Skype and he said, quote, "For the first time in 10 years, I've been sleeping through the night." End quote. He smiled and he was happy. His wife interrupted and said, "Oh, that's not all. He's been walking around the house bursting into song." You'd really have to know him. Bursting into song would not be his subtitle. So he's sleeping and he's happy and he's singing. You just can't know how happy that makes me. This is healing. This is the power of loving. It's powerful and it's just really, really touching. That's about all the touching I can stand. It's a beautiful thing when people keep asking the question, what can I do to bring more love into this situation? You answer that question and you do it, you're really, really going to like your life. Whether you're 5 saying, I can't believe that this is my life, whether you're 10 saying love is better than money, whether you're 15 and singing Mamma Mia with your mother, whether it doesn't matter what your situation in life is, it works. Guaranteed. We'll see you in a week.